Thank you, sir. All right, we have before us today LC 440644. Representative Caldwell is going to present the bill in brief to us, and then we are going to have some testimony, and then we'll follow back around. So, Representative Caldwell, if you will present the bill for us from your seat is fine right there.
You, Mr. Chairman, I guess perk of presenting to a committee you sit on. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a what looks to be more intimidating bill than it really is here. Every few years, at least since I've been here, we've pulled together a basic repeal package that we've put into the Code Revision Committee. That's what we're looking at today. The goal of this package is to find inactive or unfunded committees, commissions, authorities that exist throughout the state code and get them pulled out of the code. We've overshot with several of these, and I think we're going to hear some testimony from some who believe that they are neither inactive nor unfunded. And so, so as we do, I'll ask the patience of the committee, because part of this is going to be a working committee. I think we're going to likely try to strike a few of these at the end of the hearing if it's the will of the chairman and the committee. But I will go through each of these in detail now if you'd like, or we can do it after we hear testimony. The basic premise on each one of these committees and authorities that you see in here, though, the idea is that they are either obsolete in the form of not being appointed and not active at all, or haven't been funded and therefore were inactive and obsolete as well. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to either yield for questions or go detailed step by step, or we can do that after we've heard testimony.
Let's go ahead and hear some testimony from some folks first, and then we'll come back around to you.
Thanks, sir.
Let's hear from Ben Cowart from the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority first. Thanks so much for coming and presenting to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for having me.
Do you have a copy of the bill? Okay. I was just going to direct our committee to your section.
Mr. Chairman, that'd be Part 7, lines 217 to 222.
Thank you, sir.
Of course, assuming let me make sure we're all working off of LC 440644. Am I looking at the same bill? Good.
Yes.
Then yes, sir. That should be Part 7, lines 217 to 222.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. And my name is Ben Cowart. I'm with the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, and I'm here on behalf of our Executive Director, Deborah Carter, who is the Commissioner for Georgia, for the Southeast Waste Management Compact Commission that this bill is going to be striking. Just a little background on the commission. Modern society uses ionizing radiation to provide hundreds of beneficial uses, ranges from smoke detectors to electricity generation. But many of those radioactive materials result in the production of commercial low-level radioactive waste. So back in 1983, 8 southeast states, including the state of Georgia, entered into the Southeast Interstate Low-Level Radio Waste Management Compact Law. And under this low-level radioactive waste management compact law, each state is required to provide disposal facilities for that low-level radioactive waste generated within its own borders. Disposal may be provided by each state alone or in the cooperation of other states through an interstate compact such as the Southeast Compact Law. This is also included in the congressional approval of the Southeast Compact Law. So the Southeast Compact Commission, which our Executive Director sits on, is a ruling body for the Southeast Compact. Their mission is to ensure adequate, reliable, and appropriate services are available for management of low-level radioactive waste streams generated in the Southeast Compact region, and to promote, facilitate the maximum use of those services by the party states. Currently, the states that are entered in this are Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Virginia. A few advantages of the commission is it's an exclusionary authority. The Low-Level Radioactive Waste Policy Act gives states the responsibility for managing their own low-level radioactive waste. The only way states can provide disposal capacity for their generations and exclude out-of-region waste from their facility is by being a member of a compact such as this. If states decide to go it alone, they cannot exclude waste coming from outside areas. So there is no cost to the state of Georgia. The Southeast Compact is self-funding by its income through its investments, and that includes the expenses for the Georgia representatives to attend Compact Commission meetings, as well as other meetings related to the low-level radioactive waste management. It also provides a public health and safety. The commission promotes the protection of health safety of the region through the low-level waste management. Without access to disposal facilities, low-level radioactive waste generators would need to store their own waste on site. This would result in multiple long-term storage facilities across the region, increasing the management risk and health risk. Essentially, a disposal facility that can be managed much more effectively and regulated and inspected by multiple facilities across the region. Equitable distribution. The Southeast Compact Law provides for a mechanism where regional states can equitably share the management of low-level radioactive waste throughout their area, and it's a cooperative effort between all of these states. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. As I said, I'm just representing our director here.
I appreciate that. Great job, Ben. Thank you. Members of the committee, do y'all have any questions? I think you have definitely laid out a good case for yourself, and we appreciate you coming to testify. Yes, ma'am. Number 15. So I think we are on line 219.
Right.
And because we're in 220 by repealing Article 5 relating to that compact is what we're looking at.
So it won't show as struck out because it's literally just reviewing that entire section.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I'd be happy to provide these talking points as well.
Okay. Representative Gilligan, you have a question, ma'am?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure I understood you correctly. You're saying that we can run this commission at no cost to the state, but that if we decided to pull out of this particular compact, that for whatever reason, we then would not be able to keep these low-level wastes from coming into the state. We have no state authority to keep other states from
Yes,
bringing
ma'am.
materials in. And even though there, follow-up, sir?
Please go ahead.
So there are 6 states, I believe, that I got
Yes, ma'am.
in this compact. And I guess then I must assume that nobody is willing to cross over Alabama to get into, like, nobody would come from Louisiana through Mississippi, Alabama, and into Georgia.
Not that
Because they're outside of the compact, but we're pretty much insulated?
yes, ma'am, we are.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for your
coming.
time.
Appreciate you. All right, next we have the McCormicks. If y'all will come and explain.
I try to make this brief.
Thank you, sir. Actually, before you start, do you have a copy of the bill? I want to direct our
I do have a
committee to
copy.
the section where we're talking about for y'all.
I do. I also have a copy of our yearly report from last year. Do you
Okay,
like, can I submit that?
please. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Neely McCormick. I'm the chairman of the Georgia Council of American Indian Concern. It's a very active committee and very critical to the American Indians here in Georgia. There's about 56,000 American Indians in the state of Georgia. There's about 5,000 that are indigenous to Georgia, which is Creek or Cherokee. I have been, my regular job, I'm the chief of police of the city of Pelham. Been chief of police for 33 years there. I've worked there in Pelham for 40 years, and I started there on a grant, federal grant, called the Indian Manpower Grant. It was administered through the Georgia Commission of Indian Affairs, which is a direct ancestor of this council. Matter of fact, all the authority from the commission was transferred over to us in 2002. And so I've been working and paying taxes ever since to pay that back. And I appreciate the chance I got from that. The council has been meeting 10 times a year, except for the months of July and December. We are funded. The governor just recently appointed a new member to the council, and we handle a lot of different issues. Of course, we have issues comes in from the public all the time, and also we've been able to help with issues where construction's been stopped because of an accidental grave discovery. We've been able to keep those moving. Sea Island was one example where they had a major stoppage. It was going to cost millions of dollars. We was able to work that out so they could keep the project going. We work with Family and Children Services. There's federal requirements when an Indian child is taken into custody they have to meet. We're helping them with that to come up to standards. We've done training with the juvenile judges. We're working to set up homes, foster homes that the Indian children can be put in, which is required by federal law. We also working with the Department of Education. We're putting together projects for what's called traveling trunks. It's resources a teacher can use. They'll be distributed out to the RESAs so they can go out to the different schools. And the Department of Education is helping us make sure that comes to Georgia educational standards. We've also working with the Georgia Supreme Court at their request on the Juvenile Justice Committee. And I mean, there's a lot of different projects we work in. Census is one thing. When I found out about this, I was coming back from a census meeting, complete count committee. So, I mean, we're staying very, very active. And I think I've explained I've been active. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Sure. Oh, I'll start us off with a question if you don't mind.
Sure.
How many folks are on the council, and
There's
how do you
9.
get on the council?
Well, the governor appoints the council.
Okay, the governor appoints all your council members.
Yes, sir. There is, let's see, we have, there's 5 American Indians. There's 1 at-large member. There's 1 physical anthropologist, 1 archaeologist, and 1 scientist with experience in American Indian studies.
Very good. Members of the committee, questions? Yes. Yes, ma'am. Representative, go ahead.
Thank you. A quick question. Are there any other agencies or organizations that work with Native Americans?
The Council of American Indian Concerns is the only state agency that deals with Native Americans.
And if I may follow up, when was the council created?
Well, this council was created in 1992, but the Indian Commission, which was the office, transferred to Office of Indian Heritage out of Secretary of State, was combined, so we received everything into one agency.
And was there a particular reason why it was formed in 1992?
Well, there was a grave, the council was created because of the Repatriation Act, federal, and there was a lot of issues that wasn't covered, and this covers the state portion of that. But the overall responsibility for Indian affairs, working with the recognized Indian tribes in Georgia, the other tribes, working with the federal government on issues, has all been transferred to the council.
And has there been any change since then to now that warrants that the council should not be in existence anymore?
Not a thing. No, we're still just as busy as we were back then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I will give just a brief history on the bill here. We had some work over the summer on obviously some of these councils and different boards that appeared to be inactive. So we put a bill together and sent out notices, And folks who you've heard here have come to testify and say, hey, look, there's a mistake somewhere along the line. Maybe we didn't respond to our initial request to let us know what y'all were doing. But these are the folks that have come. Representative Caldwell's done a great job on the rest of the research, and there are a few others that have made some requests. So I'm going to turn it back over to Representative Caldwell to finish this bill, and we do have some recommendations for the committee, I believe, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And would you prefer I stay here, or you want me to go down?
No, this is fine.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to walk you very quickly through the bill, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask. And then we'll wrap back around, and would you like me to make recommendations sort of en masse at the end there, Chairman?
Let me talk to council
Okay. I'll
in the end. Okay. Yes, let's do it at the end.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so if you'll go with me to part 1, from lines 8 to line 17, we have the Pacific White Shrimp Aquaculture Development Advisory Council. I will admit to having laughed the first time I read it. As you may or may not be aware, we live on the Atlantic Ocean. But this was actually, this was repealed in 2008. This is not an active council. It simply houses itself in the code, even though it's been repealed and there is no council sitting, nor will there ever be. So this would remove that code section. If you'll go then to part 2, lines 18 to 57, we have the Georgia Tobacco Community Development Board. This is also an active board. We've been unable to locate it or anyone associated with it. In 2015, the House actually did repeal this code section, but it got caught in the Senate. Not for any particular reason. The bill just didn't make it through by sine die. So that should be hopefully a particularly easy one. They had established it originally to distribute tobacco settlement funds, and it's accomplished that mission. If we go to part 3, lines 58 to 62, we have the Southern Dairy Compact Commission. This was set up originally back in 1999 is when Georgia joined the commission. This, unlike the compact that was testified to earlier, this never actually took effect. We've gone for 20 years now waiting on congressional approval for it, and that is not likely to ever come. So this would remove that from the code section. All that would have done is given Georgia and a series of, I think it was 9 other states that it joined along with, to set milk prices. We have not run into a milk market problem here in Georgia, so I think this is probably another good candidate for repeal. Number 4, part 4, lines 63 to 69, we have the Heritage Trust Commission. This was created in 1975. It was actually superseded by what is now known as the Heritage 2000 program that was put into place in year 2000. And this particular commission was dissolved by the original legislation back in 1988. But again, all the code still sits there in our code, so another good candidate for repeal. Part 5, lines 70 to 205, we have the Georgia Music Hall of Fame Authority. This one I actually, again, think is a good candidate for repeal, but it's going to be among my recommendations to pull out, and the reason is it deals with insurance, and we can't touch that because we don't have a fiscal note. So you may very well see me, assuming the voters of the 20th still like me, see me back next year talking to you about that one. Then if we go to part 6, lines 206 to 216, we have the Water Council. This is a council that was set up under EPD. I'm going to be also coming back on this one as well, simply because, not because the Water Council meets, it's actually EPD supported the idea of pulling the Water Council out, but the language with Water Council is really intertwined with the state water plan, and we do want to maintain one of those. And so what we'll do is come back. EPD was very helpful, got us some language, and I want to thank Lauren Curry for helping with that. Got us language to try to separate that out, but we didn't get our sub in time. So I may try to take care of that in the Senate and then come back to you guys for an agree, but for now, I think we're probably going to pull. And for council's sake, I will come back on all these. Sorry, I'm just, as I explained through what we're dealing with. Part 7, lines 217 to 222, this is that Southeast Interstate Low-Level Radioactive Waste Management Commission. And other than being a mouthful, I do think it deserves to exist. It's important, I think, to make sure that we control what kind of radioactive waste is being allowed into the state, and that gives us the ability to do that. If we go to Part 8, lines 223 to 237, we have the Child Care Council. This council does not exist anymore. It is genuinely inactive. The last reference I've been able to find anywhere to it was in the year 2000, and it just sort of fell off the map and to our understanding has stopped being appointed. So that is one that I will recommend stay in the bill. Part 9, we have lines 238 to 249. This is the Georgia Southern University Hurdy Advanced Material Development Center Advisory Board. Miss Annalee Ashley was very helpful in working through this one as well. Georgia Southern does support repealing that advisory board because it hasn't been utilized, but subsection 2 under that piece, with the committee's permission, will pull out, and all that does is assigns where assets would be forwarded and assigned. That's irrelevant for 2 reasons. Number 1, they don't have any. And number 2, there's already an overlying code section that regulates within the university system where this would go. If we go to Part 10, lines 250 to 260, we have the Private Colleges and Universities Authority. Again, cannot find any evidence of these guys. From what I can tell, they have been superseded by the Georgia Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission, the GNPSEC. And if anyone here has found anything different than what I'm saying, please raise your hand and flail all over so we can call it that now. But that does not appear to exist, and I think is another good candidate. Part 11, if we're looking at lines 261 to 271, and then lines 272 to 282, these 2 pieces they're intertwined. It's the Georgia Education Council, which is a part of the Compact for Education, which also represents the Education Commission of the states. This was something that we thought had become irrelevant. We knew it was active, but weren't sure how utilized it was. And then we've found that as recently as Friday, Representative Wes Cantrell was appointed to this commission. So I'm fairly confident they're still acting. So I think that's going to be a good candidate to pull. But if we go down to Part 12, line 283 to 293, we have the Education Information Steering Committee, which appears it does remain inactive. So a separate education committee from those that has not been meeting. Part 13, we have the, so lines 294 to 306, we have the Federal and State Funded Healthcare Financing Programs Overview Committee. This is passed back in 2013. It appears to have been model legislation and never actually utilized after it was passed. So it looks like the Senate may have appointed some members, but the House never did, and it just never materialized. Moving down further, we've got Part 14. Lines 307 to 317, we have the Commission on Men's Health, again passed in 2000, no longer meeting and no longer appointed. Moving down to Part 15, we have lines 320 to 351, the Renal Dialysis Advisory Council, again no longer meeting. Moving down further to Part 16, we have lines 352 to 382. This falls under DPH. It's the Arthritis Prevention and Control Program Advisory Panel. Again, a few decades old and no longer meeting. Part 17, lines 3. See, we found a good chunk here, didn't we? Lines 383 to 387, we have the Interstate Advisory Healthcare Commission. This is another healthcare compact. This, like the earlier dairy compact, is awaiting congressional approval. Although, if it pleases the committee, I'm going to recommend we pull this one because it's only been sitting for a couple of years, and I think this actually does have the potential to eventually potentially be utilized, and so I think that may be worth hanging on to. Moving into Part 18, we have lines 388 to 399. We have the Special Advisory Commission on Mandated Health Insurance Benefits, which was passed in 2011 and hasn't met since 2013. So again, a good candidate. We have Part 19, lines 4, and I promise I'm almost done here. Part 19, lines 400 to 410, we have the Commission on Georgia Health Insurance Risk Pool. This was actually dissolved by its own originating legislation back in 2006 and has been inactive since because it's legally not authorized to meet, but the code remains in our law, so probably a good candidate for removal. Part 20, lines 411 to 421, we have the Airport Antiterrorism Training Committee. Neither GMA or GBI or any other agency we contacted had any idea what we were talking about. I think what happened here is this was adopted shortly after 9/11, and then Homeland Security stepped in, and we just never used it or needed it. So this is just an extra committee that sits out there and has never been appointed, and again, a good candidate. Part 21, we have the Council on American Indian Concerns. As we heard some spectacular testimony from the chairperson, and thank you for coming out. I think they are doing very good work, and despite previous previous theories, they are certainly active. So I'm gonna be asking for your approval to pull them out as well. And then we have Part 22, lines 517 to 527. We have the Georgia Silverhaired Legislature. This was created through the I know. I really love this bill. This was created by the Secretary of State's office. This was a group to come down and provide feedback on the work that we were doing as a legislature. Believe it or not, we were funding $50,000 a year toward this entity. It was defunded in 2009, I think as a result of the recession, and we've never refunded it. I think this would be a good opportunity to make sure that we've certainly managed to survive for the last 9 years without them. Maybe we take a shot for a little while without them. If we go to Part 23, lines 528 to 538, we have the Georgia Aviation Hall of Fame. These guys also turn out to be very active, so active that our chairman was called by a 3-star general. We're fairly confident they're doing something. I'm going to make a recommendation. We pull them out of the bill as well. And that brings us to the end of the bill, unless council has heard back from another member of council. No, okay. Then I will try to add some language that council was looking for on the tail end of the bill over on the Senate side as well. But otherwise, that brings us to the end of House Bill 783, and I would be happy to answer any questions for anybody who's got any. And thank you guys for bearing with me there.
Committee? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to go back to the Tobacco Settlement Trust.
Sure.
Because actually, I didn't realize that all of those funds had been distributed.
These are not the funds distributed to the state. These are there was a portion of that settlement that actually passed funds directly to tobacco farmers within the state. And I won't pretend like I understand all the details of the settlement, but I know that that had originally been tied together for that funding, and it was passed out, if I remember correctly, in the early mid 2000s. Sorry, 2000 to 2010, not 2050. But it. I know that board specifically accomplished the task that they were out for and has since been repealed by the House. It just wasn't by the Senate.
So it has been repealed by the House?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this lengthy bill?
It's a fun one, isn't it? Yes, ma'am.
One more question. Go ahead.
Yeah. The part about the Heritage Organization.
Yes.
That's and if you could hand me the number because I'm flipping through the bill.
Sure.
and I'm not-
Yeah, that was part 4. It was
Thank
lines
you.
63 to 69.
All right, I'm over in 8.
To 63 to 69. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, how would this, because, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because there is a lot of talk, and I know there's been a bill in the Senate that does relate to memorials. How does this tie
Sure.
in with any of these conversations that we're
Sure.
having about Confederate Civil War monuments, things like that?
The honest answer is it muddies it only in that we have an extra commission on the books that doesn't actually exist as a commission anymore because they were overridden by another commission through what was the act at the time was called the Heritage 2000 program. So wherever anybody sits on that large debate out in the wilderness, this is one extra entity that falls into that doesn't actually fall into it. So I think the cleanest thing we can do is pull this code so that way when the legislature inevitably does find itself in that debate, that we can actually have a clean one. We know what the entities we're actually dealing with are. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah, so this was disbanded with the passage of Heritage 2000 in
Right.
1988.
Yes.
Okay.
This was actually dissolved by its originating legislation in 1988.
Okay.
So that Heritage 2000 picked up all the responsibilities this had for 12 years. And this commission, to my understanding, wasn't just cultural heritage, but it also argued natural resources and things like that as well
Okay.
that it was trying to protect. But yes, this is dissolved by its originating legislation. It's extra code that
All right.
we should be able to pull.
Thank you for that clarification.
No, of course. Thank you. Good questions. Thank you for paying attention to me.
Any other questions? Okay, one
You're
more
gonna be my
question,
favorite.
and then
One more.
we're going to move this bill.
Yeah, no, going into section 13 with the
Sure.
insurance mandate, I wanted to make sure, because we are talking about, for instance, like Ava's law and the autism ending, extending mandates and growing that, how will the, and,
You're talking about Part 13
Part
or
13.
Part 18?
no, I'm sorry, yeah, 13 is the elderly people. I'm glad you know all these sections. I appreciate that spreadsheet, though.
it
That's
took me time.
spectacular. Yeah. So I like a good chart. It is, yeah, 18,
So
the
it
Special
lines
Advisory
388.
Commission on Mandated Health Insurance Benefits.
Yes, ma'am.
How does that tie into any other conversations we're going to be having about possible mandates down the road? And those that are in the works?
To my understanding, that would push that conversation back into the legislature and into the insurance committee.
Okay,
So it wouldn't slow any of that down. Theoretically, it would speed it up.
thank you.
Of course.
Very good. Seeing no further discussion,
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
this is the appropriate time.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to make some recommendations on what we add and pull? Do we need to make
Yeah.
a motion first?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move to pass House Bill 783 LC 440644.
Do I have a second? Do any members of the committee have any questions? Amendments?
Hey, I have a suggested amendment.
Very
It's a
good.
large one. If it would please the committee, I will read out the parts of the bill that I would have struck within this one very large amendment.
All
if
right,
that
we're gonna work
works with-
between you and Betsy here to make
Okay.
sure we get this exact.
And thank you ahead of time, Betsy. This would start with striking Part 5, which would be lines 70 to 205. Yes, ma'am.
Over on page 6, there's, in section 5A at the top of the page, that actually had 3 different changes in there that we're gonna, you need 2 of them still. So that section, they just happen to all be in the same code section. You see that? So we'll need to retain the change on line 174 and 177 because those are staying in the bill.
Perfect.
174, 177.
Right. So part 5, except for section 5.9, and if it's okay with the committee, I'll just integrate that somewhere else in the bill.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Say that again, the lines. Let's see, the lines, we'll need to retain lines 174 and 177, or make sure those are still stricken.
This is why we all love Betsy. Continuing from there, we would also strike Part 6, so lines 206 to 216. We would strike Part 7, lines 217 to 222. We would strike subsection 2 of Part 9, and that would be lines 243 to 249. We would strike Part 11, which should be lines 261 to 282.
Pause for just one.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Continue.
Thank you. We would strike Part 17, which would be lines 383 to 387. We would strike Part 21, which would be lines 422 to 516. And then we would strike Part 23, which would be lines 528 to 538.
Repeat the last one more time.
That was Part 23, lines 528 to 538. If anybody in the crowd did not hear me call out your section, please scream. They would be removing those from the bill, those sections.
Very good. I'm gonna go over this. Y'all, I'm gonna go
Learned
over
that
to Ms.
quickly.
Betsy if you can. We're gonna strike Part 5, but retain lines 174 and 177. Strike Part 6, Part 7, Part 9,
Just 9.2, I believe, section 9.2.
mine too, yes.
Just 9.2, yes.
Correct. 11, 17, 21, 23.
That's what I've got here.
Okay. Is that what you have, Rep?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All righty. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Very good. Further discussion? Do you have a question?
Clarity. Are we keeping the American Indian Council?
Yes, ma'am.
We will be keeping them.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And the mandated health insurance for dialysis and arthritis. We're keeping those?
Those are not health insurance mandates. They were councils to meet and make recommendations, and it appears they've already accomplished their mission.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Motion carries. And now we are back. So that was, what we were taking care of was, I guess, committee substitute, correct?
These are amendments, and now we're back to the main motion.
We're now back to the main motion.
Do pass by committee substitute.
Do pass by committee substitute. Do I have a motion?
I
Second, actually. We're calling the question.
I'm calling the question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you all
All
very
right.
much.
Well, this was our first meeting, and we kind of dove right in, and we're going to do it backwards a little bit. I want to make sure we had enough time because we only have 1 hour. But I'd love to go around and start actually with Miss Betsy. If you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself.
Sure.
And perhaps how long you've been up here helping us out.
I'm Betsy Howerton. I work in Legislative Council, and I'm staff to this committee, and this is my, I think, 16th session, I believe.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Sherry?
Hi, Representative Sherry Gilligan. I represent the 24th District, which is the city of Cumming in the west end of Forsyth County. This is my 3rd year in the legislature and my 3rd year on this committee.
Yeah, I'm Representative Buzz Brockway, represent parts of Lawrenceville and Suwannee in Gwinnett County, and this is my 8th year in the legislature. I'm glad to be here.
And the former chairman, he has decided to run for higher office now, so good luck on that, sir.
My name is Jordan Reed. I'm the counsel to Code Revision and some of the other committees.
And I'd definitely like to thank you for all your work you've put in on this bill. Really, really appreciate your help. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Pam Stevenson. I represent House District 90, and I represent 3 counties, DeKalb County, Rockdale County, as well as Henry County. I have been here since 2003, and I've had Betsy as a person over the committees for many years, so it's been a long time. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Doreen Carter. I represent House District 92. It covers parts of DeKalb County, Rockdale County, and I have the cities of Conyers, Lithonia, and Stonecrest. And I was elected 2015 in a special election.
All right.
Seems like it's been a really long time.
I'm Terry Anelowitz, and I represent House District 42. I am new here. I was elected in November in a special election.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Michael Caldwell. And there we go. I'm Michael Caldwell. I represent Woodstock, and I'm the guy who gets to carry the bill. So
Thank you for all your effort.
thank you.
I'm Kimberly Alexander. I represent District 66, which is Douglas and Paulding County, and this is my 3rd term.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Deborah Gonzalez. I'm from Athens, District 117, and it covers portions of 4 different counties: Clark, Barrow, Jackson, and Oconee.
I'm Greg Morris. I'm from Fidelia. I've been here for 20 years. The Silverhaired legislature was in full swing. I remember it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And I'm Timothy Barr. I get the pleasure of representing the 103rd District, which is North Gwinnett County and South Hall County. And I appreciate you bearing with me, committee. This is my first year as chairman, so a lot to learn, but appreciate everyone coming. Thank you all very much for coming for your testimony. And we'll look forward to moving this bill through. Meeting adjourned.